everybody. So I wanted to just look at why Johnny Depp's appeal is so important and why lawyers are getting so upset about the fact that he lost his counterclaim. Why so many lawyers think it's such a big deal. Now, I'm not a lawyer, of course, I'm an analyst. It's a different scenario, and to put that into perspective, as an analyst, I would look at cases and give them percentage chances to win based on other things. For example, I would know that the simple fact that Amber Heard is female gives her a much greater chance of winning when Johnny Depp is male. Just the gender does, because we know that 10 times as many men as women are in prison. The fact that it's a defamation case, it's very hard to prove defamation, so that would be on her favour. Again, the fact that she won in UK, that's in her favour. The fact that, well, even if it wasn't her, she wasn't a party, he still lost. He definitely lost, and he couldn't appeal it either. So that's against him as well. And then we have the fact that she didn't actually mention him by name explicitly. That's against him. And it's sexual assault and it's domestic violence. That's against him. So there's a lot of things against him, and that's why I put it at 20,000 to 1 before the case began. So without looking at any evidence, without looking at any of the facts of the matter, it was 20,000 to 1. And yet by the end of the case, I said by the last couple of days, it was actually in his favour. And that's the weight of evidence that he had. Now, if you're a lawyer and you were looking at that like that and you were going, oh, would you be, let's say you were Johnny Depp's lawyer and you were going, geez, I'm a 20,000 to 1 chance of winning this. Why am I bothering? You might sort of get into the complacency idea and just say, well, I'm taking his money. He's rich. Well, what an idiot, giving me lots of money. And equally, if you were on the other side and you're Amber Heard's lawyer, you might think, geez, I'm 20,000 to 1 chance of winning. Why do I need to bother? And they would just say, Amber, you're going to win. Don't worry about that. Or all the odds are stacked in your favour. And you wouldn't bother putting up a proper case. Now, so that's why lawyers tend to ignore these sorts of statistics, and why an analyst is often not even used in legal situations. We're sort of on the side, we look at cases after they're finished, and we don't normally get involved to assist lawyers, not in deciding whether a case is going to go ahead. There are circumstances where they'll use us, but a lot of circumstances where they won't, because it will impact on how they try their cases. And so when you hear lawyers talking about this case, you won't hear them give percentages. So that's the difference. They won't give you odds. They won't tell you the chances. They'll just say, this is the argument that could win. This is the argument that could lose. And they may well, if they're good at it, they'll be able to imagine themselves in both scenarios. So that's something that differentiates between lawyers and analysts. And if I want to look at Johnny Depp's appeal, and I hear what some of the lawyers are saying, some of them are saying, oh look, he might not win. And that's the reality, is that in the Court of Appeals, it is favoured against the people appealing. So because Amber Heard lost, and even though she was a really good chance of winning, as soon as she lost, she became a very bad chance of successfully appealing, just by the nature of the fact that she'd lost. And Johnny Depp has suddenly, it's turned over, and he is a very good chance of defending against whatever appeal she might make. So it's around about 20 to 1. So that's, even if it was a 50-50 case, the jury might have got it wrong, it's 20 to 1. That's on average, without looking at what the legal argument is, or the strength of it, or all the other different issues. So we can sort of have all those different biases that favour her before the case begins, but as soon as we get to an appeal, it's thrown out the window. And the fact is that before the final verdict came in, she was actually favoured to lose. So that means that she's less than 20 to 1. She's more like a 50 to 1 without looking at the evidence, just because the weight of the evidence in the actual trial was so overwhelmingly against her that it actually combated that 20,000 to 1. That's how strong the argument was. And she still had a chance. But that means that suddenly, I mean, you normally can't win an appeal if you weren't favoured to win the case when it was tried. So basically, and I know there was one appeal that was won recently, and that was against Cardinal George Pell. Now when I covered that case, and when that one came, when the verdict came, he was odds on to win and to be found not guilty. And that was on the normal trial. Odds on because the evidence simply wasn't there. And I'd put it about 20 to 1 in his favour to win that court case based on the evidence. And of course there are other things like how hard it is to prove sexual assault when there's no witnesses, and the fact that the other witness before he died said on his deathbed that it didn't happen, and all these other things. And it just all sort of went, and I went, what? Why did the jury give that result? So he won on appeal in spite of that 20 to 1 odd, because it was such a massive miscarriage of justice for him to lose the trial. But the question is, was it a massive miscarriage of justice for Amber Heard to lose this? Well, if you ignored the trial itself and you just focused on the statistics of it, 20,000 to 1, it was a miscarriage of justice. But if you're focusing on the weight of evidence there, it was in his favour quite significantly. And so that therefore changes the argument. It means that she's not likely to win an appeal. And again, we haven't seen her appellate brief. We don't know if she's actually going to launch an appeal, but the odds are against it. Now, the odds are against Johnny Depp winning as well, by nature of it being an appeal. And by nature of it being, well, actually no, not by nature of it being a defamation case, because defamation is hard to prove, and therefore on appeal, if you lose, it's actually a lot easier, because you can go back to the fact that, well, defamation is hard to prove. And the fact that they've got different elements of it that say, well, the judge and the court, which is essentially the judge, made mistakes in allowing it, and I mean it was barely touched on, means that he is actually likely to win. Now again, you can look at lawyers, and a lot of lawyers will tell you, oh well, we're not confident that Johnny Depp will win on appeal. Fair enough, because they're just looking at the fact, oh, it's an appeal. And because lawyers don't really look at the numbers, not in detail. They don't look at, oh well, actually defamation is hard to prove, and therefore if he's lost a defamation case, which is on the counterclaim he lost it, then you can actually, you're a good chance of winning that appeal, or a better chance than normal. They're not looking at that, because all they're focusing on is that the appeals court, as a general for all appeals for everything, is hard to win, which is a reality. Now, one reason, and I wanted to just focus on why lawyers are so upset about this, is because this is potentially a precedent, and it's already been used in other court cases where they said, oh well, Johnny Depp's lawyer was found, well, Johnny Depp was found liable for what his lawyer said. So a lot of lawyers are very upset about this, and I'll just sort of just go about what that implication is. So the implication for this is that if I hire a lawyer, and let's say, I'll give an imaginary scenario, I get on a bus and the ticket inspector says, oh, you haven't bought a ticket. So I say, what the hell? And they fine me. So they're going to fine me $20. So I go and get a lawyer. I don't know why I get a lawyer for $20, but nonetheless, I get a lawyer, and the lawyer goes up there and goes to the local newspaper or local TV station and says, hey, those bus drivers are corrupt, racist, whatevers. And then the bus company turns around and sues me for $20,000. I would be furious with my lawyer. But you can just imagine the legal implications if I can be found guilty for the lawyer saying that. Now, if I told the lawyer, oh yeah, they're corrupt, you know, whatever, that's in confidence. He has no right to tell that without my permission or knowledge. And why is it my fault that he's gone ahead and done that? He's potentially broken lawyer-client privilege, and he's potentially made things up. If there is defamation, he's responsible. So he's either responsible for defamation or for breaching lawyer-client privilege. Why am I being sued for it? Why am I being found guilty? And that's a big problem. So you can just imagine what might happen after that. So if that sort of became the precedent, that's what happens all the time. You might find that you hire a lawyer and you sort of go, oh, geez, lawyer, I don't trust you. What if you get me sued? What if you cost me $20,000 for this $20 case that you're representing? I'm already paying you $10,000 for this. I don't want to have to be paying $20,000 in being sued later on. So, you'd probably find then you'd have to have a clause. You'd sign an extra clause with a lawyer, which is going to cost more money. You're going to not trust your lawyer as much as you would normally. And people don't trust lawyers much anymore anyway. So it would create all sorts of problems, and people would probably be more likely to want to represent themselves. And that then means they go to court. And if you self-represent, and I've self-represented a few times, people don't usually look at you very, very fondly. We'll say, you go to a court, you're self-representing, they're going, geez, you're an idiot. And yeah, so, and if you find that it becomes the norm that people self-represent, you'll find that people will be having stupid arguments on both sides a lot. And it will depend on who self-represents, but some people don't know the law, they'll just be saying stupid things. And I mean, if you have one side self-representing, the other side has a lawyer, the lawyer almost always wins. But if both sides are self-representing, well, it becomes a fair case, I suppose, but it also becomes somewhat random. And the judges will just be going, and they'll be bashing their heads against walls. And I mean, you quickly go back to the days before judges, before lawyers, and it's just sort of randomly decided by kings and queens and something like that. And you just lose all sense of justice or fairness. So however much we hate the legal system and we think that lawyers are lying whatevers, you create this sort of situation, it's an attack on the legal system. So that judgment against Johnny Depp for that counterclaim, because of that factor, is an attack on the legal system in itself. And again, that's why I think it will work on appeal, because I don't think anyone wants that precedent. So there are a number of other reasons, but I think that that's one big one that the Court of Appeal are going to say no. They don't want that precedent, because that becomes law. That becomes case law. It's just as significant as the Roe versus Wade, which was effectively the abortion law. It's not as high a level as laws decided by politicians, but it's still pretty high level. Anyway, that's it from me. Bye-bye.